There's a certain type of person the internet quietly makes fun of. The one who scrolls, pauses, sighs, and then feels like their own life just got smaller. They're called insecure. Overly sensitive. Too easily influenced. But here's what nobody tells you. What looks like weakness on the surface is actually your brain doing something very specific and very human in an environment it was never designed for. Picture this. You open your phone just for a minute, just to check something. 5 minutes later, you've seen someone your age traveling to places you've never been. Someone else announcing an achievement you haven't reached. Someone smiling in a life that looks cleaner than yours, and something shifts. Not loudly, not dramatically. Just a quiet tightening in your chest. You don't even fully realize it's happening. But your brain starts running calculations in the background. Where am I compared to them? Why am I not there yet? What am I doing wrong? And the strange part is, you weren't even unhappy before you opened the app. That's the part people miss. This isn't about being naturally negative. This is about exposure. Because this type of person doesn't just look at social media. They absorb it. They don't scroll past things. They measure themselves against them. They replay certain posts later, not consciously, but they linger. A picture of someone's relationship, a casual success story, a before and after transformation that makes your own progress feel invisible. And here's a mirror most people won't admit out loud. You sometimes feel behind, even when you don't know what the timeline is. You close the app, but the feeling doesn't close with it. It follows you into your day, into your work, into your thoughts when you're doing nothing at all. And this is where it gets more interesting, because the world calls this comparison. But psychologically, it's something deeper. It's a pattern your brain is wired to perform. And it didn't start with social media. It just got amplified by it. Because long before phones, your brain evolved to do one thing exceptionally well. Evaluate your position. In a tribe, in a group, in a social structure, where you stand determines safety. Status determines access. Belonging determines survival. So your brain constantly scans for signals. Am I doing okay? Am I falling behind? Am I enough? And here's where it gets complicated. Social media doesn't show you a tribe. It shows you thousands of people. All at their best moments, all at once. Your brain treats it like a real environment, but it's not a fair one. You're comparing your internal experience to someone else's curated highlight, and your brain doesn't fully know the difference. That quiet stress you feel, that subtle sense of not measuring up, that's not insecurity in the way people think. It's your nervous system trying to locate you in a distorted reality, and psychologists actually have a name for part of this. It's called social comparison theory. Originally studied by Leon Festinger in 1954, it explains how humans determine their own worth based on how they stack up against others. But here's what most people don't realize. That system was designed for small groups, maybe 20 people, 50 at most, not thousands, not millions. So when you scroll, your brain isn't casually observing. It's performing hundreds of comparisons in minutes, and it doesn't have an off switch. That's why it feels exhausting. That's why it lingers. That's why sometimes, after doing nothing but scrolling, you feel like you just failed something. And here's another mirror. You don't always compare yourself to everyone. You compare yourself to people who feel just close enough to you. Same age, same background, same starting point. That's what makes it hit. A stranger with a completely different life doesn't affect you the same way. But someone who feels like they could have been you, that stays. And here's where the psychology gets strange. Your brain isn't trying to hurt you. It's trying to motivate you. That uncomfortable feeling? It's supposed to push you forward, to make you improve, to help you adapt. But in this environment, it backfires. Because instead of one comparison, it's constant. Instead of clarity, it's overload. So the signal gets distorted. Motivation turns into pressure. Awareness turns into self-doubt. And progress starts to feel invisible. If this is landing somewhere real for you, and I suspect it is, subscribing means you'll catch the next one. These quiet explanations of why your mind works the way it does, that's what this space is for. But here's what nobody talks about. People who are affected by this the most aren't the weakest. They're often the most aware. The ones who notice patterns, the ones who think deeply. The ones who don't just accept things at face value, because your brain doesn't just see an image, it builds a story around it. You don't just see someone traveling. You imagine the freedom they must have. You don't just see someone in a relationship. You imagine what it feels like to be chosen like that. You don't just see success. You imagine the version of yourself that hasn't reached it yet. And that gap, that's where the stress lives. And psychologists actually have another layer for this. It's tied to something called cognitive elaboration. Research in cognitive psychology shows that some people naturally process information more deeply. They don't skim experiences, they expand them. One study published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology found that individuals high in elaborative processing are more likely to build extended internal narratives from simple stimuli. In simple terms, you don't just see things, you experience them mentally, fully. And here's the reframe most people never hear. This isn't you being overly affected. This is your brain being highly responsive, highly interpretive, highly engaged with meaning. In a different environment, the same trait would be an advantage. It would make you perceptive, empathetic, insightful. But here, in a space designed to trigger constant comparison, it turns inward and becomes pressure. But wait, it goes deeper than that. Because there's a quiet paradox at the center of this. The more you compare your life to others, the less clearly you can see your own. Because your attention gets split. Part of you is living, part of you is measuring, and you can't fully do both. So even when something good happens in your life, it doesn't land the same. Because somewhere in the background, your brain is asking, is this enough? Is this as good as what I saw? And that question steals the moment. That's the cost, and it's real. This pattern can slowly disconnect you from your own progress. It can make you underestimate how far you've come. It can make ordinary moments feel insufficient, even when they're meaningful. But acknowledging that doesn't mean something is wrong with you. It means something is happening to you. There's a difference. Because the system you're in is engineered for visibility, not accuracy. For highlight, not context. For impression, not truth. And your brain is trying to process it honestly. That's the mismatch. And here's the part that shifts everything. The same mind that compares is the same mind that can perceive depth most people miss. The same awareness that notices where you fall short is the same awareness that can understand people, patterns, and meaning on a level others don't reach. You're not just reacting, you're interpreting constantly. And that's not a flaw. That's a capability, just one that's been placed in the wrong environment. So what the world calls being affected too easily is often just a mind that refuses to stay shallow, a mind that doesn't scroll past life. It engages with it, even when it hurts. And maybe that's the quiet truth here. You're not behind. You're just measuring yourself with a tool that was never built for this scale. Because you're not supposed to compare your entire life to someone else's best 10 seconds. That's not a fair equation. It never was. At their best, people like this are observers of the human experience. They notice what others ignore. They feel what others skip over. They connect dots most people don't even see. They're not built for surface-level living. They're built for depth. And depth doesn't always look impressive from the outside, but it changes how you understand everything, including yourself. So the next time that quiet pressure shows up, it might not be a sign that you're falling behind. It might be a sign that your mind is trying to make sense of something that isn't meant to be taken at face value. And that's a very different story. Tell me, does this feel accurate to you? Or is there a part of this that doesn't quite fit?